In this video, we're going to be talking about the mesh items a little bit more. We've already kind of touched on it briefly. So let's throw a cube into the scene. Again, I have a cube in this mesh. I can right click on this or double click on it, either or, hit rename, and change this to my cube. If I hold shift, click on this one, it's going to throw another cube. So now we have two cubes sitting directly on top of each other. So let's take my cube, grab its polygons, and move those over. So again, this is my active mesh, the one that I have selected, my cube. Let's take this cube, make it a little bit smaller, and make it a little wider so we can tell the difference a little bit better. So again, my cube is perfect. The one that's just called cube isn't so cube-like, so let's just change this to something else. So this is just box. So again, as I click on either of these, the one that I have clicked on becomes the active mesh. That's the one that I can select its polygons, select its vertices, select its edges, and move those around. This one, I go to Polygon Mode and I click over here, and nothing happens. Same thing with edges and vertices. I can't do anything because this is the inactive mesh. Same thing in Photoshop. This is a layer that I'm not actively touching. A cool thing in Modo, though, is if I click on this mesh and hold shift and click on this mesh, I can actually have two active meshes at once. Now both of these, you can see over here, they're both selected. Go to Polygon Mode, I can grab this polygon, and I can now make these boxes correspondingly longer, correspondingly taller. Click on the right edge of this one, move over here, hold shift, click on the left edge of this one, switch to the scale tool, and I can scale these apart from each other. So again, I can work on multiple meshes at one time. Another cool thing that I can do is that I can actually transfer geometry from this mesh, my cube, to box. So to do that, there's a couple different ways you can do it, but let's just go over the easiest way. And that would be just like text. Up in the edit menu, we have cut, copy, and paste. Not a lot of other 3D programs can do this function as light as Modo does. But realistically, anything that you can select, you can cut, copy, and paste. So let's just double click this box. In the My Cube mesh, go to the box mesh. Actually, double click it, hit edit, copy. And again, your hotkeys are listed here. Control X for cut, Control C for copy, and Control V for paste. So copy, go over to this mesh, edit, paste. Now this box is in this mesh. If I grab him and move him over, you'll see that inactive mesh, it copied him and then threw him into this mesh exactly where this one was sitting. Other thing I could do would be double click this, edit, cut, it cuts it, go over here, edit, paste. So if I wanted these three separate meshes, I can hit N for a new mesh, or undo that if you don't like hotkeys. Hit this little down arrow and do mesh. It'll give you a new mesh. So let's just name these in order. 1, 2, and 3. And you'll notice if I click on the directional light, so we can see over here, the 3 is grayed out, the 1's grayed out, the 2 is not grayed out. If I click on that, that's the one that has the active geometry. So let's do this a little faster. Double click, Control X, Control V, Control X, Control V. Now we just cut and pasted a box into each separate mesh. So again, now let's actually add one more mesh. Name this one 4. Now we have 1, 2, 4, 3. So just click and drag him and slide him down. So he's in there. Technically, I could drag him and put him inside of that mesh. And now he's nested inside of that one, kind of like a group. We don't want that though. So we'll just have it like this. And let's grab the second one, copy, paste, move, and we're good. So now if I wanted to work on all these at once, again, click on the top one, hold shift, click 2 down, shift. What that's going to do is it's going to grab everything from where you started until where you end. So if I go to 4, hold shift and hit click, now 1 through 4 are all active meshes. I can all make those boxes taller at the same time. But if I have my one mesh selected, hold Control, so Control instead of the Shift key, and click on a mesh, now I have two specific meshes So again, it didn't select the two, that I can change the height of those, do whatever I want. So again, it's kind of cool that I can have anything or nothing active at one time. And one other thing I want to mention, let's just have one of these active at once. So technically I can move this guy's, his polygons, his edges, his vertices. I can kind of move whatever I want on it. If you're copying and pasting geometry, you want to be in Polygon mode and you want to cut, copy, paste polygons, not vertices or edges. Because again, just an individual vertex floating in space. So if I grab all the vertices, hit copy, new mesh, paste, it pasted these, but it didn't paste the corresponding polygon. So if I go to edges and I try to select these, nothing happens. Polygon, nothing happens. Vertices, though, I know where the vertices are because the inactive mesh is there. I can take these vertices, move them over here, and these are just floating vertices. They're just floating in space that aren't really doing anything, but they're kind of taking up data. So again, be careful if you're copying those. You usually just, again, want to copy polygons at all times. So let's go ahead and delete that mesh with those in it. So the other thing I want you to be aware of is something that's called item mode. It's a little bit, they kind of change it around with these newer updates, but if I hit 1, 2, or 3, that correlates to vertices, edges, or polygons for hotkeys. 4 goes to material. We're not doing anything with materials right now. But if I go to 5, so toggling between 4 and 5, if I hit 4, this is like, it looks like the cube is selected. If I hit 5, you can see a faint, like a yellow outline. So this, if I have a mesh that I can see the polygons and the wireframe is yellow, that means that it's actually in item mode. So I'm not moving the polygons around, I'm moving, in a sense, this mesh container. So if I grab this, you'll see the widget for it isn't centered like when I select an object. Everything's different in item mode. And again, if I click on this, I have material. This is item mode right here. They changed the name to part. So it's a little bit weird, but at this time, we just don't use part mode, and realistically we're not going to use material mode, and these two as well. Pretty much anything that's in this little drop down, we're not using those at all. The other thing that I caution you, if you ever see your mesh and it has a yellow outline on it, I would say either hit the escape key or hit spacebar. Realistically, you just don't want this yellow outline to be there and then start moving stuff around. Again, it's not the end of the world, and if you do accidentally do this, I can help you figure stuff out. But if you see the yellow border, just switch to edge, switch to polygon, switch to vertice, and that's going to help you out. And the other thing, technically, if I have all the edges selected, I have a slightly thicker yellow line than this one, so kind of toggling back and forth. This would be edges. This is item mode. Item mode, I can't see these edges right here, so it's a little bit different. And again, this is changing to a yellow color. Ignore that for now. But again, item mode, I can't see through it. Edge mode, I can see the edges I have selected through it. So again, just kind of stay away from item mode. If this ever comes up, just switch back to polygon mode, switch back to edge mode, and just kind of stay out of that item mode for now. So in closing, the last thing I kind of want to leave you with is just different people's workflow. Some people would rather have, let's say that this is a ground and these are just different buildings that we have. They're different shapes, sizes, whatever. Some people like to have building 1, building 2, building 3, and building 4. They have them in different mesh items. They like to compartmentalize things like that, and that's perfectly acceptable. Some people, though, let's go ahead and grab all these meshes, cut, paste, and then get rid of these empty meshes. Some people would rather have all the buildings in a mesh that's potentially just called buildings, and then all their buildings are inside of this mesh. There's pros and cons to this. It depends on how many little pieces you're working with, but just know that if you ever need to split this out into separate pieces, I can just Control X, N, Control V if you like hotkeys. If you don't like hotkeys, double click, edit, cut, go over here, mesh gives you a new mesh, edit, paste. Same exact thing, just a little slower. And then one more time, double click, Control X, N for new mesh, Control V. Now I have these all in separate meshes again. It'll default to the name mesh and then a little number based on what number mesh it is. It won't remember that this is named buildings or anything. But just know that either of those ways are viable ways of working once you start creating things.